Welcome to Spiritual Rockstar Podcast, where world-changing spiritual entrepreneurs come to deeply awaken the power within to bring forth their greatest purpose, to create massive awakened impact for millions of souls around the planet, while enjoying being in tune with all life and real wealth in all aspects of their lives. I'm your host, Daniel John Hanneman. And welcome everybody to another Spiritual Rockstar Podcast show. I am so grateful that you are here. We've got another amazing guest. This guy is a trailblazer for sure. He's done all kinds of things. He's an award winner. He's a Tony Award winner, and what do I know about all this stuff? But I'll just say, like, this guy has been making films. This guy is a conscious business coach. He's launching 2 movies. One of them, I believe, he said, is on Netflix. Oh my God! Like, he's helped people run. There's stuff about multi-million-dollar businesses that he's helped to run. My God, he just he finds a way to bring it all in, and it's all because he is brilliant at tapping in and using creative intuition and just really showing up fully in the world. So I'm grateful to have you here, Nick. It's such an honor to have you today.
Daniel, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. I know that a platform like yours is precious and sacred. And so to bring me into your world, I really, really honor that and appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. So let me tell you more about Nick. So Nick Demos is a Tony Award-winning Broadway producer, documentary filmmaker, conscious business coach, and manifestation expert. He has over 15 years teaching pranayama, which is breath work, yoga, and creativity, as well as 30 years in the entertainment industry. He has traveled from the Tony Awards to ashrams to run a multi-million-dollar business in between. Nick guides you to clear blocks and tap into your creative intuition so you can be unapologetically visible and manifest while making monumental impact. That's what we're talking about here today. So, Nick, wow, tell me about, I'm kind of, I'm a channel, I told you, and all that sort of channeling all the time. And I see you sort of similarly, right? But like, I just get this feeling to ask, like, what was it? I know we start there here, but like, what was it like being little Nick when you're like a kid? Like, did you, like, I think of Steven Spielberg, like when he was younger, he'd go and he'd sneak on film sets and stuff like that. And I'm like, I wonder what, younger Nick was doing and what was he envisioning about the world or where he wanted to go with things, and to kind of get an idea of how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, so little Nick was always a storyteller. My mother would tell you that I used to jump up on the table and recite all the Grimm's fairy tales. And very early on, I knew that would be my path or the course of my life. I would gather the kids in the neighborhood and put on full productions. And when I say full, I mean I had them in full costumes and makeup, and I created the scenery, and I even had programs and a lemonade stand for intermission. I really was a producer even then. That said, I grew up in rural Montana. And rural Montana in the 70s and early 80s was not really a place that was terribly embracing of this. This was a very macho, masculine Marlboro Man kind of territory. And I really did not fit in well. We did, however, live across the street from a dance school teacher. And I used to go every single day after school and sit and watch the girls dance. And LaDonna Jimison, my dance school teacher, bless her, so thankful for her, saves my life in many ways, said to me one day, Nick, get up and join us. And that really began the journey towards the professional career that I had, because getting up to dance really shifted things for me, got me into my body, got me literally moving, but got the energy within me stirring and moving and creating in a fantastic way.
Mm.
By 19, I had, well, my first professional job, I was 16. By 19, I had moved to New York and done a national tour of a show. By 26, I was doing a show at the Radio City Christmas Spectacular with the Rockettes. You know that show with the Rockettes at Christmas time?
Mm-hmm.
There are boys in the show. And I was one of the guys, backup dancing and singing. And I'm in the show. There's this Nutcracker ballet. Only it's in bear costumes. So I'm in a bear costume, and the director of this show, he had us jump from a trampoline off stage, do a leap onto the stage in these bear heads, and land on the steel stage. And you're doing this like 5 times a day, over and over again. It's Christmas holiday, right? Because there are 6 shows a day at Radio City, 7 days a week. You get a day off. It's rotating cast. And one day, and I remember the day very specifically, it was Christmas Day. I jumped off that trampoline, landed on the stage, and on the stage, there's this grid, these numbers that are at the front of the stage. And I'm looking all over the place for the numbers. I'm looking for my number because you have to stay on, because it's actually very, very dangerous at Radio City, as you can imagine. I'm looking for my number, and my bear head is falling down over my eyes, and I can barely see. And I'm looking, and it's Christmas, and I'm getting very, very anxious in this bear costume. And suddenly tears began to stream down my cheeks inside the bear head. And I made it through the number. And I remember going up to my dressing room and taking the bear head off, looking at myself in the mirror and saying, this isn't your life. This is not what you need to be doing. Because I knew that I wasn't really being a storyteller. That really wasn't my path in that way. I didn't feel like I was telling truth. I didn't feel like I was sharing what was really inside of me that I'd been bottling and pushing down and pushing down and pushing down. But I got on the phone, old school, picked up the phone and called every place I'd ever worked. And I said, hey, I'm a director choreographer now. Yeah, was I? No, but I just felt that I had some sort of belief or trust that I could make that happen. And one of the theaters said, oh my gosh, Nick, we just lost our choreographer. Why don't you come down and choreograph the show? And so within 2 months, I transitioned. And within a year, I had fully transitioned to being a director choreographer, which now I can look back at as a bit of an older human. You know, I was 26 years old at the time. I was like, yeah, of course this is going to happen for me. Now I can look back at that and say, wow, there was some divine stuff happening there. This was guided. 3 years in to directing and choreography career, I'm at a theater in Oklahoma City, and they fire the artistic director while I'm there. So I'm 29 years old. The board of directors, the president of the board, turns to me and says, hey, we've really liked your shows. Will you run the theater for a year while we do a national search? And I was like, wow, yes. What? Because in my mind, I thought, what can I learn? How can I grow? And that began a 8-year, almost 9-year tenure there. After the end of the first year, they came back and said, we love what you're doing. Will you stay? So I did. And eventually I got a little antsy. As an artist, as a human. I didn't feel like I was growing, which has always been important to me, sort of that growth mindset. And I decided I wanted to produce on Broadway. And so I gave them a year notice. put in my year notice because it takes time to find a replacement. And I began producing. And the first show I produced was a show called Memphis. So a year later, after I left, I'm at the Tony Awards. We got nominated for a Tony. I'm at the Tony Awards. Now you have to understand, I had been pushing, right? This is all push energy. This is like, make stuff happen in the world, very masculine. I'm going to make it all happen, right? I'm at the Tony Awards. Bernadette Peters is up on the stage. And she's got the envelope. She's taken her sweet time, let me tell you, to announce it. Felt like it was forever, right? She opens the envelope and she says, Memphis. And it erupted around me. What I remember is erupting sound and people standing and hugging and, yelling and screaming. And I remember standing up and having a moment. And the first thought was, oh my gosh, thank goodness my investors are going to get their money back. Because I was worried. I had taken in my mind all these people's money, invested it in this show. Oh, they're going to get paid back. The show's going to be a hit. That was the first thought. The second thought was, this is it. This is it. This is all this is. This isn't what this is supposed to feel like. And I was walking up to the stage, and people will say it's like an out-of-body experience when this happens as you walk up into the stage. And it was like slow-mo walking to the stage, but my mind was going, I can't believe this is it. This is what I've been pushing for. This is what I've been working towards. And I'm not feeling anything. I was completely numb. And I like to say that's when the real work of my life began. Because that achievement took me to a place of despair. And I really had to dive in and look at myself and look at the trauma that I had been pushing away. Look at the darker parts of myself that I'd been hiding from. And look at why I did what I did. Why was I that driven? For what? At the expense of everything. I had no personal life. My relationships were suffered. For what? And that was really the wake-up call. And I went and sat with a teacher and therapy and really had to dive into myself so I could heal the trauma and the wounds from that childhood in Montana. Not only the sort of bullying that I experienced from being there in that time and that place, but also there was some sexual abuse, and there was a combination of traumas that I had to break apart in order to find contentment, to find peace within myself.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, I've heard that story from other, especially it seems like the examples that come to my mind are men that have pushed for this big success that they've imagined, and they get there and they're like, wow, like it's not anything what they imagined. There's this, what's that? I don't follow boxing, but Tyson Fury is his name, I guess. So he talks about it, like his whole life from being a kid, he's thinking about boxing and he's gonna be the champion. He already knows it. He's already convinced, and then he just goes on that whole path. He gets to the moment, he becomes the champion, and he immediately goes into depression because he's like, what? Similar to what you just said, like, that's it? Like, what's the point? Now what? And so and I've heard it from other people that this push to success. There's some people that push to success to tell you that's the way, that's the only way, you gotta push for it, you can't do it being lazy. Like, that's so I think it's interesting because you got both conversations going out there, right? You gotta push, you gotta work 100 hours a week, and then you got other people go to another extreme and be like, oh, you could do it in 10 hours a week. You could do all kinds of things and blah, 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 and make millions. Um, and then for me anyway, and I'd love to hear your response to what I'm saying. It's like, I just found like, what do you want? What's your truth? I mean, live your truth, whatever that is. You want to work tons of hours and all this stuff, like go for it. Go have fun with it. Hey, if that's fun for you, some people, like I often mention him, but like I've interviewed and become somewhat, friendly or friends with Mark Allen. He's the publisher of Eckhart Tolle, and he's like, I'm as lazy as possible. I get started around 1 p.m. each day, and he's done well. He's got a lot of success. So he's very, very happy, very healthy, very enlightened man. Okay, so you gotta look at these people and say, to each their own. There is not one type, right? So I think it's amazing your story of then getting specific to your story. It's just there's this idea that I've got to make something of myself as a vibe I felt in it. And then, you do that big thing, and then you're so in service, the first thought is like, oh, good, I'm going to make them happy, right? I made them happy, and it's good. I'm so grateful for this. And then it's like, for me though, what is there, right? And what does this really matter to me actually? And then you go on this deep, journey that you've been on, and I'm sure continues, right? I mean, we're not done. So that's
Yeah,
pretty.
we're not done. We're not done until we're done, right? And we're not done on right now. I'm still on the journey ultimately. Yeah, I think for me, part of it was this delicate dance of the masculine and feminine energy within me. That masculine, you're going to work, that you've been told the way you're supposed to, and that sort of patriarchal, like old school, like we're going to make it happen. And then when I sat and allowed myself the time, which I think was really vital, that I just took some time off and sat with myself and asked myself some deeper questions. Then I allowed a bit more of the feminine energy that you were talking about. Of maybe I don't need to work till 1 o'clock. Maybe maybe today I'll work and then I won't work on Wednesday. And that I played with that for a bit of time. And what that did was opened up my creativity. I began to direct film. I'd never directed film. I wrote a book. I'd never written a book. I'd been so focused, so driven in the theater. Getting that Tony Award was so important that I sort of lost track of the art of it in many ways. And so to reconnect with my artist was a big part of that feminine energy. And now I try to find this, it's a dance of both, of both the divine masculine and the divine feminine energy in harmony. I do like structure. I thrive in structure. I have a morning sadhana practice. Every morning, some yoga, meditation, some writing daily for about 15 years now. And it really does set my day up. For me, I need it because I can be very squirrely and get into a lot of trouble if I don't have some structure. But within that structure, what I've learned, and I have other points of my day as well, but what I've learned is to allow myself the freedom within that structure that I never used to. But that's been a practice and a process of finding what's right for me. And like you said, there's no one way. Anybody who's trying to tell you there's one way is selling you something. That's marketing.
There's one way. I know the way. Follow me.
Yes. You're a really good marketer is what you are.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that's a whole nother subject we could get into. But everybody has, getting to the topic today, maybe it makes me think of that, is we all have a story, right? So, it's done unto you as you believe. If you believe, that this is what's going to work for you, you may experience that to a level, but then, spiritual awakening happens for some of us in the process, and sometimes it doesn't. But, sometimes that comes to you, or you don't listen and you just keep getting more pain, right? But, more feedback. But yeah, some of us awaken, and when we're marketing, yeah, there's different ways we can market. We can say we're, hey, I got it, you want it? Yeah, maybe I'll give it to you. We got all kinds of different marketing approaches, right? I mean, so relational marketing, push marketing, we've got pull marketing, we've got, I don't know, like there's just endless marketing, approaches. One of the things you talk about is storytelling. You just told a story. And, for me, the power of that is like, I'm much more connected to you after you tell the story. And then usually when someone tells a story, there's aspects of the story that we relate to. Oh yeah, I remember when I was pushing, and that part of my life and what I learned from that. And and so we're building a connection, and the parts where I resonate with you, I'm leaning in. I'm like, oh my God, that's like me, and things like that. To me, that's part of the power of storytelling. And I was just telling you, like, I'm just creating something brand new right now. I'm like, the first question I had, what's the story behind what I'm creating for this venture? Because it's got to have a great story, in my opinion, for how I like to do things. And I'm like, so still working. I just started working on it today. Not like I've got to figure it out yet. But so there's all kinds of things. There's storytelling to maybe figure something out, like I am, like figuring out like what is this thing all about. There's this could be for marketing, it could be so many things. But tell us, now I'm going to ask you the very basic question from there. You just told a story that's pulling people in. How do we utilize, what are the different ways we can utilize a powerful story like yours that you just told to grow our business?
Well, I want to say first that storytelling is as old as time. Our brains actually were formed through stories. They developed through stories. So we naturally lean into them, which is why they're so powerful, which is why the connection happens. Like you said, you maybe begin to visualize. For some people, they begin to visualize what the person is sharing. And the interesting thing is that the brain of the person telling the story and the brain of the person that are listening actually synchronize, which is that's the only way that it happens, is through storytelling. And that's why they're so powerful. So when you look at it in those terms, how could you not use it in your business? Because what people buy from who? People buy from people. We buy something because we connect to the person, particularly in anything that's personal brand related, right? Maybe, you don't necessarily buy Nike, but I'm going to share the Nike story of when they did their Let's Do It campaign, how it completely shifted the brand just from that 3-line let's do it. But it was aspirational. It drew you into the stories of the people that were doing it, that were making it happen. You connected and you thought, oh, I need to do it. I got to wear those shoes and I got to be fit, right? So even in that instance, just that story shifted that brand so much because we connect to it, to the story, and to the person in particular, when it's a personal brand telling the story. There's what we call the know, like, and trust factor. With a story, you already know something about me now after I told my story at the beginning. And you made a decision pretty quickly whether you liked it and liked me or didn't. And that's a good thing. That's not a bad thing to say, oh, it's a good thing to know, for your customer to know, oh, or your client to know, oh yeah, I want to lean into this person. Oh no, they're not for me.
Mm-hmm.
Very quickly. And then that begins to develop the trust, because by listening to the story, by sharing something maybe vulnerable or sharing something that is connected to the truth of who you are, people begin to trust you. And we need to trust, particularly right now, our leaders, those that we follow, those that we purchase from, those that we think can solve our problem, because we have such a mistrust right now of it. So I would argue that now more than ever, it's important.
Yeah, I mean, I know like through, I've been online on the online space as a coach, healer, trainer, whatever, all the different titles.
Yeah, I've had about 20 titles too.
Handler, blah, 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 blah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah. So for like what, 17 years now. So uh and I just, yeah, over all these years of doing all these interviews, when I had a radio show and I got this podcast, I got two podcasts. Um, after doing all that, all the live events I've done, retreats, and that I've led and whatnot, like, yeah, the one of the number one things is like when I was serving healers, for example, I tell my story about it was the invisible to invincible arc was the arc. I like the idea of having arcs of transformation, and I probably have a new one for this new thing. I already have an idea what I'm going to use. So anyway, came to me today because I've been asking for it. Boom, then it shows up. So but my point is when I tell the story, I'd be like, I was a quiet kid, and but I was had this love for people and this connection, and I felt like I could make things happen. I could make objects move. I could do anything. I had so much power and everything. But yeah, I didn't think it was appropriate. I shouldn't show that side of myself. It's when I would do really well at something, I feel guilty. I feel like, why can't other people do this? So I shut it down, and then and this and I talk about all these stories, and people start hearing that, and I share the vulnerable parts. I was depressed, I was suicidal, I was, whatever, all the different things, and when people are done hearing me talk, not just the story itself, but the way I say it and the way I'm showing up, people are just like, oh, I love you, and you're so real, and like
Mhm.
that's the commonly what I would always hear is just, you're just so real. That's what I
Yeah.
love about you. You're just so real. And that's really so important. And I've often laughed that there's all these courses out there on different things. They even have courses on how to be authentic and whatnot. And I'm like, isn't it funny that we need actually to be trained how to be authentic? That we've lost. And I'm sure you would appreciate that with your background. Like actors are like, you're being more authentic when you're acting. I've heard people say that, whatnot, like to find your true character. That's a deep discussion. But I mean, it's interesting. Like, if we can just honestly tell our story to people, like how powerful that is.
Well, because it takes away those masks.
Yeah.
We've been given underneath all of the it's authenticity is underneath these masks that we have been given, and they were put on us, or we grabbed them and put them on for protection ultimately. But it's layers and layers and layers of masks. So when you can lay down the masks, and when you can come back to the true essence, the truth of who you are, and you can express that to people, they're blown away, because they still have masks on that they know that if they could just let go of, how much more content, how much happier, how much more connected they would feel. But they're not quite ready to let them go, because they are our protection. They shield us from criticism, from pain of any kind ultimately. And when you can lead as the example by sharing your story and taking off a mask or two, whew, it inspires people.
Mm.
It's a call to action. It's a call to arms to them. Like you said, they come up to you and they say things like, "Wow, I just love you. You're so authentic. You're so real. I can't believe you shared that." And it really, I think, is a gift to you to them, from you to them, but also in return, because you get that feedback.
Mm-hmm.
You receive the it's not accolades, because that's not it. You receive energy back. You receive a kindness, and they I think one of those things that they say that we all most want, we want to be loved, we want to be seen, we want to be heard. And when you tell your story, all three of those come to pass in a way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, it's funny. I find myself sharing little stories often with clients. I'll be like, "This reminds me of a story," and
Mhm.
usually it's something with my life, and so I'll be like, "Reminds me of this one situation. I was playing tennis, and you know, I can remember one time when I was playing tennis, I was working really hard. I said I win no matter what, and I did. And then my body, shut down afterwards because I was like in this insane, like I'll die even if it takes that. And then another time I was winning tennis matches all summer long. Didn't matter what combinations we played in doubles. It didn't matter anything. I would just won every single time. And I was completely connected. I was completely in flow. I was completely whatever. And it was so easy. It was the easiest thing ever. And and so then I have a lessons to teach. And then as I tell more of the fullness of that story, I could tell more detail, obviously, but it's like people are inspired. They're like, yeah, it shouldn't be hard. That it can work, but it's just not sustainable. And it's so much more fun to let it be easy and be connected. And then they're learning from that. So I always indulge I always say, I usually tell my client, let me indulge you with this little quick story, and because I like to tell them, right? And then I find
Yeah,
if I like to tell them and it's not excessive, that they like to hear them, right? They're like, oh, that's cool.
that's
Yeah.
your just do it. That's your just do it story, right? In that sense. And
Yeah.
I think that the more stories that you can catalog, per se,
Mhm.
into like and it can be like in a Dropbox
Mhm.
folder. It can be in a Google Drive. If you have a
Mhm.
story that comes up and you think about a story that you might be able to use, write it down. I say this to people all the time, write it down. I have a story box and I throw a story. If something comes to me in the middle of the night or in the shower, often in the shower, I run out and I write it down and I put it in my story box. Someday I may come back to it and use it, when I'm like trying to find inspiration for, because everything has a story ultimately. Like you said, you're so smart to start your process of what you're going to create with a story. Like, what's the story behind it? Well, if you have a list of stories, or if you've got a story box, like I call it, where I go in and I go, oh, that story might work here because of X, Y, and Z of how it connects. And I already know this story and I know it from my past and I know I can share it really well. And it's so real and so me. And that's going to work with this because it's going to then sell what the concept that I'm creating. So
Mhm.
I think that there's no one way to do it, but I do think that's a way
Mhm.
to almost organize your stories, because I get that question a lot. How do I organize them? How do I find them? Let them come and create a list, put them in there, because there's so many ways to use them. Like you're saying, you use them with your clients. You use them when you create a product. Every product needs a story. Every single one of your products needs a story. Not the same story. They all need a different story that connects to the reason why, that transformation that you're providing.
Mhm. No, that's great.
Oh my gosh, I get a little excited. Sorry about that. I'm like, oh, ah,
Because if it's got a great story to it, it's much more likely to sell, right? I mean,
it is.
yeah. Hmm.
It is.
Can you give us some examples of that to inspire people where for yourself and your clients too, like where you created
Yeah.
these amazing stories and how it totally like made a huge difference, or maybe they didn't have the story infused in their marketing or their messaging or into the whole energy of it. And then all of a sudden they did, and it flipped everything around. So I'd love to hear about that.
Yeah. So
What's the story?
I have a money course
Hmm.
of um, really in money manifestation, but really about attracting money in your life and wisely using money. And I tell the story of when I first learned about the value of money. We, and that was, I was 16 and I wanted something from my father. I
Hmm.
wanted money from my father. And he said to me, you got to go earn it.
Hmm.
I'm not just going to give it to you.
Hmm.
And I said, okay. My friend Patrick, he had a paper route. Now that I think about it, I wasn't 16. I think I was 14. I was a little younger, but I had a paper route. It was my first job. And he said, hey, I got the route right here, but two blocks over, they're looking for somebody. Why don't you take that paper route? So I went down to the Record Eagle, that was the paper, and got the paper route. And they told me at the time that I could deliver the papers or I could sell subscriptions. And if I sold subscriptions, I would make a certain amount of money. If I did the paper, I'd do another. Well, it seemed weird to me, the subscription thing. So I said, I'm just going to be a paper boy like Patrick because I know how to do it. He showed me how to do it. And I'm delivering the papers, and it's a lot of work. I put them in my red wagon, and I had to roll them, and I had to put them in a sleeve, and then I had to toss them, and I had to carry this wagon up and down the hills and all around the neighborhood. And one day I stopped at a house that we didn't have, and I thought, I'm going to try this. And I walked up to the door, and I asked the lady if she'd consider buying a subscription to the paper. And she said yes. And in that moment, I realized that I didn't have to work hard, that money comes in many forms. And I would lay down in the grass. I remember laying down in the grass and thinking, oh, wow, I just made more money from selling one subscription than the last month of delivering papers. My father is totally wrong. It's not hard work that makes money, because I wasn't really in alignment, right? Alignment for me is talking to people, connecting with people, telling stories, having conversation so that she'll buy a paper versus the work, the harder work in many ways of the delivery. That was not for me. So I learned that lesson. So when I added that story into the course, it began to sell. Because the course was all about manifesting money with ease.
Do you want to meditate and make money? Let it be simple. Let it be easy. Let it be fun. Go to yoursacredpurpose.com and get your free meditate, make money meditation today. Right.
So when I added the story of when I learned how to do it, boom, I began to sell.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Do you think it's, I mean, all the things you said before, people are syncing with you and all that stuff, but no, like trust, etc. Sort of like proof too, right? But what else do you think is a part of that? Do you think it's because your energy is more aligned now, like you just said? Do you think that's a big piece of it, like from your perspective?
I do. I absolutely do. I think, our energy walks in the room before we do, so to speak, in that people can tell if you are truly aligned with something. And when you are sharing truth, it's really difficult to be out of alignment when you're sharing your truth authentically. And that will attract people. That draws people in.
Yeah. That's so true. Wow, powerful stuff. Yeah, because I know like one of the also what I remember is a summit I hosted, and I had a lot of different people on there. They were selling products, and it's one of those things where they sell their thing and I get a percentage and all that sort of deal. And back before she got to be well known, although a lot of people might still not know her, but Christy Marie Sheldon was on, and she was starting to build up reputation, but it was, she wasn't nearly where she is these days, in terms of being well known on Mind Valley and all this stuff that she does now. But back then, when she came on, why she was one of the things I felt what made her so effective is not only her work, but was the storytelling, because she would use it in regards to testimonials. You would say, oh, there was okay, now let me tell you about Sally. She came in and she was in this place, and she was dealing with this, and then here's what she had to say. And it was sort of like a story. And then she would tell the testimonial story of transformation, and people, and she did a number of those throughout the entire time. She would sprinkle it in, like it was like commercial break. Okay, here's another testimony. Here's another. and she's I'm pretty certain, I'd have to double check, but I'm pretty certain she sold way more than everybody else from my recollection. It was many years ago, but I just remember how effective that was, and it stood with me. Is those testimonials, and when I think about it, it's another form of storytelling, correct?
It is a form of storytelling. It's transformational storytelling. You
Mhm.
know, in your business, I find that there are three basic types of storytelling. Invitation stories, which are those that you're inviting people just to begin to get to know you. Affirmation stories, where you affirm to them that you're the person for them. And transformation stories, which really are, you're going to go from here to there if you work with me or if you purchase the product that I offer.
Mhm.
And the testimonial is the most powerful of the transformational stories, because it's not me, Nick, saying, look how great I am, look what I can do for you. That
Mhm.
can come across maybe a little sleazy or slimy or much.
Mhm.
Whereas if you're offering, Sally went from A to Z, and here's what she had to say about it. She's talking about you and your product in a way that is transformational
Mhm.
and positions you as the person who helped her do that,
Mhm.
which is everything. Because then you're put into that guide position. Talk about storytelling. The guide
Mhm.
is in the hero's journey. The guide is the one who helps the hero take the journey. One of the biggest mistakes I see people make in marketing with storytelling is positioning themselves as the hero rather than the guide, making it about them. And what testimonials does is it automatically makes you the guide and the person who's had the transformation as the hero.
Right, right, exactly. Because you could be the hero too, right? Just like Sally. That's how I see it.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Rather than I'm the
Absolutely.
hero, you need to learn from me. Like,
Right. Right.
they may see that too, but it's not. That's not the approach. I hear what you're saying. Like that makes sense. That's great. I love that. I love that. So let's review that again. So what you said, there's three different types of storytelling. So what are so let's go over that. So what are the three?
The first is invitation stories. And truly, these are the smaller stories that you tell, or the more personal stories that you tell, that really bring people into your lair, right? They bring that draw people into your world. And these
Mhm.
can be on social media, in Instagram, on things that just draw people in. You're inviting them in. The second are what I call affirmation, and those are longer form. That may be podcast. That's the stories that you're telling on your podcast, like you just did, are
Mhm.
affirmation stories.
Mhm.
It might be in emails, stories that a little bit longer stories that you tell in emails that uh, affirm for people that, yes, I'm interested in more. Yes, I'm learning from this human. Yes, I want to continue down the path with them. Or, no, I don't.
Mhm.
And then the third are these transformational stories that we were talking about that, you know, you can do in longer form as well. Certainly the story that I told at the beginning today was a transformational journey story, right? At the beginning of the podcast today. But testimonials really serve that incredibly well.
Mhm. Mhm. Wonderful. Wonderful. I mean, yeah, what are the blocks that you see people have around this idea of using storytelling to grow their business? What they yeah, but like the usual, yeah, but about whatever, right?
Everything of, yeah, but I don't want to be on video. Yeah, but do I have to speak? Yeah, but do I
Mhm.
have to share something personal? And ultimately, the answer is you don't have to, you don't have to. And yes, you do need to share something personal. You don't have to do it on video if you don't want to. You don't have to speak if you don't want to. But yes, if the more personal, the more universal. That's a quote from Martin Scorsese, that the film director, that I think is really quite brilliant. because the more personal you can get, the more core to the truth of who you are, the more it's going to resonate, because the more truth is truth, right? At the very center, we all know when we hear it. And
Right.
so when you can hear that, when you can connect with it, it connects you with people. But those are the primary. I really get a lot of fear. It's fear of being judged,
Mm,
fear of the critics, fear, especially online, the sort of trolls and the bullies online. I get a lot of fear around that. And ultimately what that comes back to are the sort of psychic knots, that which you hold in your body, that your old traumas, your old dramas that are stored within you, that are reacting, that are being triggered by sharing who you are in the world, those masks that you have on that we were talking about. And the
mhm,
more that you can take those masks off, and the more you work through energetically the psychic knots and the traumas, the more open of a vessel and a channel you are for truth.
mhm.
And when you can come to that place of being fully open and fully yourself, and that's when people start saying, oh, you're really authentic. That's when people start saying, oh, I can really trust you because you're being honest and I can tell.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. Oh, nice. Great. Yeah, I mean, they can't, like you said, they just can't deny the sense of connection and truth that they're feeling in what you're saying. It just, they can, like you said, they can feel it, right? They get those, I don't know, spirit bumps or whatever you want to call them. But like, yeah, they just know, like, this is, and then when they feel that with you, um, rightly or wrongly in some cases, but in that moment, they're like, you're the real deal. You're the real deal now. So that totally skyrockets the no like trust factor for sure. Um,
I had
yeah,
a,
wow.
I had a
Yeah.
student the other day said to me, she was really afraid of what her mother was going to think, and her aunties. She kept saying, oh, I'm so scared of my aunties. I'm so scared of my aunties. And so we worked through a bit of what was coming up for her in terms of the old stories. And
Mhm.
we got to the realization that she got to the realization that that was actually old, that it wasn't actually truth, that her aunties are already hearing what she has to say, what she's a channel. And she
Mhm.
was really having trouble with sort of in this sort of spiritual coming out of the closet way, right?
Mhm.
Of her truth.
Mhm.
And I said to her, well, what if by telling your story
Mhm.
fully, they're
Mhm.
actually going to understand it better?
Mhm.
And that was a light bulb moment for her. And
Mhm.
that opened something up for her of being able to express herself. And her auntie heard it and ended up calling her and saying, how come you've never really shared this with me?
So you could tell somebody, hey, I'm a channel, I've done this, I've done that, I've done the other thing, like just kind of list a list.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, okay, whatever, you're a channel. Or you could say, let me tell you, this let me tell you about like how I become like this channel. I don't know, are you curious? Would you like to hear this story? Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah, I like a good story. All right, let me tell you. Well, it all started, like and
Yeah.
you're totally get a different response, right? So that
And
is
she did. And
mm,
she completely did because of that. It wasn't the judgment that she was expecting. By actually sharing her truth, her story, they could actually connect and understand it in a way that they did not understand it before.
that's great. That's amazing. So so I know you help people in a number of ways, and this is one of the big ways you can help people is through storytelling to grow your business. And you've given some wisdom today around that and supported people. People are popping with ideas and like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, right? And that's
Yeah.
so powerful. And I know that you have ways of people helping people with this and more. And also some people they feel like they're intimidated to tell their story. They need support with that, or they might want to polish up how they present their story. And
Yeah.
that you definitely are very capable with those things. So If they want to reach out to you to just learn more or connect or whatever, what are some of the best ways to do that?
So my website, thenickdemus.com, on Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok, basically all the socials. I'm at the Nick Demus.
Mhm.
And I have a podcast as well called The Creative Soulpreneur.
Mhm. Yeah, I love that. Awesome. Let's check it out, you guys. I'm really grateful for what you're sharing here today, Nick. Um, I'm going to ask you for some more wisdom right at the end of the show. So everybody keep tuning in as we transition into this next segment, which is the energy scan segment, where I do some energy scanning downloading for my guests. We'll do 3 downloads today for Nick, whatever comes through the channel, so to speak. Energy scanning is a specific way I tune in that I do teach people as well. It's just as a heads up to people. I don't usually talk about that, but I could tell you a whole story about it if I want to, but not today. Okay. So if you want to learn more about that story, you can always go to my website. I'll tell you more about that later. So Nick, are you ready to receive some downloads?
I am.
Okay, cool. All right. So let me go ahead and tune in and see what comes through. So what I'm hearing is so these are just more basic downloads than more deep dive scanning. But the first thing is just I get you as a maestro, but the direction with being that maestro is the calling, the purpose is actually seems to be the number one seems to be peace. Is it bringing people into all wonder and peace, but like peace is the center, you know.
Mm.
And so when people are in that peace, like then I get the sense like with the way you help people, everything's possible. But if they're chaotic and not at peace or whatever, like nothing seems to stick, nothing seems to work for your tribe. They have to come into the alignment, the creative flow, but peace seems to be extremely important as a quality that gets embodied maybe in the process as you're being that maestro. Okay, so that's one thing. All right, so let's see what else comes through. Share 2 more and then we'll reflect. There could be more with, I don't know, you could tell me later, but I see you at it could be figurative, but I see you at a piano. So there could be something about embracing, let's see, let me look into it a little closer. It seems very soothing. Like I get a soothing feeling for you being on that piano. Now it might be something else. It might be writing. It could be something, but I'm being shown a piano, and I just see it just like you're just the groove you're into, and like I just get the sense that everybody that's listening in is just getting jazzed and just feeling more connected and more love, and so that's the next image coming in is you're gathering people. Yes, you can do it with story, but there's also this sense of it's the creativeness, but then they're just showing the piano, which again, I'm just share the first read of that. We could talk about it later. Okay, so let's see what's next. Okay, so they're showing me more with the sacral chakra and just instant manifester is what came through. So when you're dropped into your body and and then into that energy and the sacral energy, like that pulse, um you experience more synchronicity, more abundance, more like instantly, like what occurs to you is happening. So that's what they're showing me, like you have this attunement in this area of your life. So those are the 3. So anyway, I'd love to hear any feedback or reflections on what came through.
So the first that you talked about was the maestro of peace, ultimately.
Mm-hmm.
And I work with a lot of creatives, creative artists, visionaries,
Mm-hmm.
and they can tend to be all over the place. And so one of my jobs is really to help them center, connect, and I have to embody that because
Mhm.
I too am a creative being that can be, if I'm not regulated, which is why, as I said, I have a sadhana every morning to structure me, so that I can find that peace, so I can be that embodiment in my my community. We all of my coaching calls begin with a meditation to ground us, to bring us into the present moment, so we can move out of that energy of all overness and into a more peaceful state.
That's great. That's great. Anything else that particularly stood out to you from what I said?
The piano was interesting because I am working on a new musical
Okay.
for the first time in 10 years.
Oh, wow.
So
Okay.
that's really interesting. I'm not writing it, but I am going back as a producer, as a consulting producer on that.
Mhm.
And there is this sense of flow around it
Okay.
that's really interesting. And
Mhm.
then the instant manifester when I'm in my sacral energy is so spot on.
Mhm.
That's so good.
Mhm.
Because I forget sometimes. People always say to me, "You're an incredible manifester. You would manifest like nobody I've ever seen." And I used to tend to think that it was from the third chakra, the power center. And what I've realized over time is no, it's actually in my sacral. And so when I can get into that embodiment again of that, that's when it happens instantaneously. That's when it's quantum. That's when it's like incredibly powerful. So thank you for that. That's a great reminder for me.
Awesome. Awesome. Yay. All right. All right. Guys, I just want to share with you briefly that you can go ahead and learn more about myself and gain more. I actually do energy scans for people, so you can check that out at my website, yoursacredpurpose.com, where I can download through all your chakras, see your gifts, see how more wants to manifest for you, and get you clarity too on what wants to happen with your mission, your purpose, your business, your sales. So it's a Rock Your Sales, actually, energy scan consultation that you can get there. And then also there's a free meditate and make money meditation, because yeah, as Nick says, it's so important to get ourselves centered and grounded to start the day and get those connections happening. And especially too for us that are entrepreneurs, to get those downloads and connections with money and let that energy come in. So we open up the chakras and the channels for you to get more clear about what really wants to happen, and then you can let it be a lot easier. Let things drop in the easy way, the meditate and make money way. So you can take a look at all that and take advantage of that for free at yoursacredpurpose.com. So Nick, yeah, so thank you for being on. Do you have any last words of wisdom for people listening in?
I think the final word about storytelling really is to begin, to
Mm-hmm.
share little stories. If it feels fearful for you in any way, start with something that just isn't fearful. And it's like a muscle. Not only do you get better at telling stories, but you also become more comfortable with sharing yourself. So start with something small, but get started.
Oh, I love that. Okay. More storytelling, guys. I love it. I know I'm embracing it 100% more because that was so powerful. And I just started even more by what I was doing today. So earlier today, yeah, so it's very timely as always. The guests that come on for all of us, right? What a synchronicity for all of us today. So Nick, thanks again for sharing your gifts with us and your wisdom, and I really appreciate you being on the show today.
Thank you.
And thank you to our listeners, everybody listening in. Like I always say, keep on tuning in. We'll keep on rocking it here at Spiritual Rockstar Podcast. Till the next time, everyone. The Spiritual Rockstar Podcast. Stay tuned for our next upcoming new episodes each Wednesday and Saturday. Please be sure to subscribe, rate, and review to help us to serve you best. As a reminder, you can get your free Meditate and Make Money meditation at www.yoursacredpurpose.com to rock your sacred purpose. Goodbye for now, everybody.